So let's have a chat about the World Economic Forum. Now, the WEF. For many people, it will conjure up, of course, it's now January 23, Davos. And Davos is and has taken place, and a lot of the general public view Davos as a group of wealthy people, in fact very wealthy people, all meeting together to congratulate themselves on their focus and awareness of some big issues in the world, and that many of them have a self-interest. People like Bill Gates spring to mind, and on the face of it, and some propaganda that you are aware of, you could consider that many people might arrive at that thought. Now, yes, a lot of wealthy people go to Davos, and they do appear to be there for their own self-gratification. That does seem the case. And of course, you've got Klaus Schwab, that makes a Bond villain look like the good guy. I mean, Klaus Schwab is he is a Bond villain, character, without him trying. But I imagine, that if you did meet Klaus Schwab, I imagine that, he's a nice chap, and he's funny, and he's probably, a very good host, and the things that he talks about, they are probably all very real issues that face people, and I bet you his access to resources and data, is really quite revealing. And I said something derogatory there about Bill Gates. Maybe he's a nice chap. I have not met him. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Although when you look at some of his purchases around the world, it is interesting. He's certainly a wealthy guy. Anyway, back to the World Economic Forum and climate change. Now, in business and with people that I talk to often, the World Economic Forum is mentioned a lot. And, most of the time, actually, not most of the time, I'd say 50-50, it's a positive and negative. Actually, let's think about this. No, I would say it's a 60-40, 60 being a negative and 40 being a positive. And, I might be very kind there. Now, I know that many people will like the World Economic Forum, and they will have had, very good experiences working with them or working for them. And, some of the things around the World Economic Forum, like, it's a group of privileged people, there might be some grounds there, this might be an issue. It might be ironic that some very wealthy people that are in public talking about carbon footprints are those people that jump on, a £14 million private jet to fly over to Davos, and we know that there's a big footprint from that one jet aircraft, and that's much larger than if they jumped on a normal aeroplane with lots of other people. But saying that, the individual that's on a private jet, flying over to Davos, they might be very busy. They might have a lot to do. They might be very good at their job, and believe it or not, what they will have probably done is looked at the cost of owning a private jet or having access to a private jet, and they might have measured that cost against the cost of traveling not on a private jet. And I bet you there comes a point where it's just as cost effective to actually travel on a private jet. And I think that's about 300 flights per year if you need to use a jet aircraft 300 times a year. You very quickly reach the business case to actually travel on your own private jet, believe it or not. Anyway, we're chatting a bit too much about private jets. My point is that sometimes people traveling around on private jets, like Elon Musk, they do because it saves an awful lot of time. It's a productive aspect of their life and how they travel around. So you can't, always quickly jump to conclusions and take a negative view of people just because they're on a private jet. You need to know more about how they got that, their financing available, and why they do it. And I bet you it's more to do with productivity and saving a lot of time for them, and that's why they have a private jet. Anyway, back to the World Economic Forum. And yeah, if I did meet Klaus Schwab, I would certainly asking about his Bond villain persona, and ask him how he feels about that. And I've got a feeling it amuses him and he finds it very funny. Anyway, someone like me is more bothered about, in reality, what is actually happening and what value these people, what value they put in place in terms of their work effort, and also, what they talk about, what ideas they have, what value they build in their work areas. Are they understanding the world that we live in? Are they making a positive impact to the world that we live in? And one of the main reasons that I listen to a lot of World Economic Forum content is I am a believer. I personally do believe and think that climate change is a man-made thing, and human civilization in the last 100 years has massively contributed to the climate, and because of our hydrocarbon fuel usage, one respect of that is one of the consequences of that is there is a massive extra introduction of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Also, there's a lot of other chemicals and byproducts that are released into the atmosphere because of hydrocarbon fuels that we haven't mentioned, and these chemicals are incredibly bad news. They're toxic and they're not good for anything. I, like many people, but let's just spin it on my view. I am aware, and I believe that climate change is a massive problem for people on planet Earth today. So it's 2023, there's about 8 billion people on Earth, and you can roughly calculate what that means in terms of fossil usage, fossil energy usage. You can literally extrapolate the number of people on Earth to the amount of oil that's pulled out the ground and then burnt in hydrocarbon fueled vehicles. What's interesting is many times we'll have heard people mention oil is liquid gold, and it's how the world works, and it's why world exists today. And they are correct, actually. That combined with technology is the reason why we have society and the world that we live in today. And it is very true, oil is the one source of energy, it's the one resource, natural resource that we have in the ground that has built the world that we have today. It's as simple as that. It is a very important, very big thing. Now, what we have done, what man has done, what society has done is for many years now, we've understood that, digging oil out of the ground and then making a derivative of it that explodes in a tube to create diesel engines, petrol engines, and space rockets and jet aircraft. Man has realized that that has a negative impact on the atmosphere, and there are consequences of that. And one of the consequences is that it changes our weather system, our weather pattern. And that can have and does have a negative impact on society in terms of food production, food growth. There are parts of the world that, because of climate change, can no longer grow crops. There are also parts of the world that 20, 30 years ago were not able to grow a crop, but because of climate change, they can grow a crop. Now, that is interesting. That's why we have the term climate change. But if we look at the behavior of people on planet Earth and we extrapolate where we may get to in the future, what may happen, there is some, potentially, some serious north wind there. This climate change could have a very destabilizing impact on Earth in terms of food production, weather, average temperatures in warm countries, for example. But essentially, we don't have to go very far to understand that we are digging a resource out the ground that is finite, and at some point in time we could run out of it. And we are burning it. The byproduct of that, there is a chemical release, it is impacting our atmosphere, and there are negative consequences. I don't think anyone can not see that. And believe it or not, there are some people that think climate change is, we've always had climate change, which is true, but we have nothing to worry about. Some people think that we should continue having lots of people, and 8 billion is fine, and population of the earth can just go higher, and we can simply find more oil or find another energy source and deal with things that way. Some people take that view, and I understand, or I can relate to why they take that view, but I think it's incorrect. I think it is it's a way of putting your head in the sand and not wanting to deal with issues that are there that are going to cause everyone problems in the future. I think it really is like burying your head in the sand. We know that in nature, if you allow an animal to overpopulate, eventually it will backfire and it will make itself extinct almost. Or there could be natural disasters that can bring about the demise of a group of people. But there is plenty of evidence. Some very clever people, a lot of scientists, part of their work has been to study the impacts of the changing world that we live in, the impacts of climate change. And there's an awful lot of science to suggest that we do have big problems here. Straight away, let's look at the natural resource. Can we simply constantly keep sucking oil out of the ground and burning it? How much oil is there? Is using millions of barrels of oil per day the way forward? You can quickly understand that indefinitely we can't do that. We can't simply keep producing oil, making hydrocarbon-based fuels, and it will take us into the future. That there is no way that will work. At some point we will run out of oil if we keep digging it out the ground the way that we do. Now, there is an argument that technology will find a solution. Now, yes, I do support that, and I think that technology is going to find a new energy source if it hasn't already. And of course, we know of the renewable energies like solar and wind and hydro. I'm a big fan of nuclear. I think nuclear energy is a very good resource that we have today. Right now, it's very expensive to build power stations, and there's a risk there because of the nature of what it is. But you switch on a power station and it runs for decades and delivers all the power that you need. And technology has enabled us to manage the byproducts of nuclear energy. And that is one of the energy mixes that does work. Just talking about energy for a moment, coal power stations, straight away, we have to get to the point where we agree, or we can see that they are just too dirty unless we can capture all that carbon, and we can do something with it, like we do with nuclear waste. Coal power stations, there has to be a better way. That they require too much coal, they require too much dirty fuel. You can have an oil power station now, of course. That's a massive drain on the oil reserve. You have to remember that we use oil to make plastics, and plastics, it's a very dirty, expensive process anyway. But once the device, the object has been made of plastic, it does have a life. It can last a long time, and plastics are a massive part of our life. And of course, we need some oil to make plastics. So I suppose really I'm talking about the real dirty byproduct of fossil fuels, which of course is transportation and fuels. But so essentially, I believe I understand, and I think many people share the same point of view. And the World Economic Forum certainly shares the point of view that we have a problem. We have a problem in terms of climate change, a related problem, population size, and energy use, and energy use projections going on to the future. Because we haven't really mentioned, well, up until this point, I haven't mentioned our growing requirement for energy. Combine that with population growth. What we're talking about today is, okay, so we dig a lot of oil out the ground, we burn it to make energy, and by the way, we've already worked out that we're going to need more of that energy anyway. That can only be considered a growing problem. And also, if we, I think we are entering a situation of a Pareto curve where the problem just goes higher at an ever increasing rate. We're going to end up with the system breaking. So all of a sudden power cuts, and people aren't enabled to use their cars, or transportation will cease. Things will break, and we certainly want to not go there, and have policies in place that steer society and cultures away from these problems that are so clearly there. Now, this is one of the reasons why I like the World Economic Forum on climate change, and I like all the effort that goes into this massive subject area. And there are a lot of initiatives that deal with this one aspect, because let's look at it again. Climate change and energy, these two things are part of an issue that are directly related to human life and society. If we get our energy use, our energy production wrong, society will stop functioning. If we can't feed everyone on planet Earth, and once again, let's look at that number, 8 billion people. If we can't feed 8 billion people, very quickly we're going to head towards, and I believe we will head towards, civil wars incredibly quickly. Just think about it. The country you're in, or the area you are in, something happens in the world, some geopolitical event that isn't good, and all of a sudden all the supermarkets infrastructure can't get all the bread and food it needs. Now, I imagine that at any point in time, and for example in the United Kingdom, if supermarkets couldn't get the stuff that they need, there's probably about a week of stock left on the shelves. So everybody would run to the supermarkets to buy up what's there. And I imagine we'll probably have another week or two of food in people's fridges and freezers and storerooms. What I'm saying is, within weeks, everybody would be starving and would be hungry. And we can really easily and quickly see how that leads to, some trouble. People will start fighting for food. Now, I'm just talking about a country or an area. Imagine if the world got into that situation. Now, of course, this analogy is, perhaps nowhere near happening just yet, and that is fine. But what we're talking about is that this could really happen. All the mood music, all the facts and the figures are probably there. We have some disruption in geopolitics right now, and guess what? It is centered around energy and food production, and it is terrible. The ramifications of what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now could very easily take us into a world war. Very, very quickly we could go in that direction. And we have a couple of people in charge of military capabilities, and these people do not seem to be seeing things straight. And it's another subject, so we'll perhaps come back to there another time. But back on to climate change and the World Economic Forum's intentions and objectives, and how it drives policy around climate change, I think is correct. Simply the fact that it's saying, hey, we have a problem, we need to be thinking about this problem. And I suppose at this point, I do want to mention Greta Thunberg, and I like her. I think she's great. She's, however she's developed it, she's got the gumption and the motivation to get up on her platforms and say what she says. And I think for that alone, it's worth her saying what she says, because she raises issues and an issue that are important and that directly impact absolutely everybody on Earth. And you can see this is a big subject, and I feel I was going to talk about population growth there, but I thought I better not, because to do it justice, I need to be on camera talking about that, possibly separately. Anyway, I wanted to come back to Klaus Schwab, the Bond villain, the World Economic Forum and climate change. And on the whole, the messages that come from the World Economic Forum and climate change, I believe, are real and true. And there's an awful lot of clever people that are focused on the issue of climate change and are trying to understand all the data, all the facts, and understand what policy might work for countries and the world that we live in. And it's definitely something we need to be spending an awful lot more time and energy and focus on. And we do need to have some technology advancement and energy production changes. There's some more technology advancement in this area, but also a public mood and awareness change. Even though many members of the general public will be aware and focused and also committed to doing things that make society and the climate hopefully better, even though we have that awareness, I don't believe we are focused enough. I think the problem is too more real than that. I think it's too more urgent than that, and we do need some big changes in place sooner rather than later. Having policies that indicate that in the next 10 years we'll have got here, the next 15 years we'll have got there, I think that's way too far away. I think our time frames are down to 3 years and 5 years for us to see some change in the right direction, and all the physical data and the scientific data to support that we have understood what we are talking about, and we have some policies in place that are pushing us in the right direction. Anyway, you can see this is a big subject to talk about. There's an awful lot of issues here. It's very difficult to know that you've got absolutely the right data and the right facts and figures. Sometimes you have to work with, to the best of our ability. We have, enough information that discounting errors, we feel comfortable that the indications of this information is correct. We have these problems ahead of us, and we need to deal with these problems, or we need policies in place that deal with these issues. We need to steer this world society ship around these obstacles in the road, and we need to look after society, civilization on planet Earth. I suppose that is what we're talking about. Anyway, I hope this video is, I suppose it's a chat and an indication of thought. I hope it's helpful to some people, and please don't hesitate to comment below and tell me that I'm wrong, and offer any thoughts that you have. And I hope everyone is well, and I hope to see you all again very soon.